The Human Target, issue 4, Tom King with Greg Smallwood.
This is Tom King in like unconventional Tom King, because he really is doing a noir story here. Man, I saw you went with the easy joke about that ice page.
Oh man, this is one of the most like mildly erotic issues of a comic I've read in quite some time. Like the sexual tension and the build up to her basically saying, "Look, when you give me an orgasm, it's probably going to get quite cold in here because I'm not going to be able to control it."
And not just the little moments, them sitting in the bug.
Well, that's the thing. That dialogue that I just said obviously is a big part of it, right? Because she says, "When I lose control, it's going to get quite cold." But the panel that's on, she is biting her lip, and that leads to something that I'm going to praise this entire issue for: is the facial expressions and the performances of the created actors, if you will, from this art. Smallwood is one of the best like storytelling like faces I've ever seen. The way that like Chance just looks at her, or when he's thinking about something and he's considering things, like every single like he just tells a story with like glances in a way that the art's so good that it conveys the emotions that are being portrayed.
And it reminds me of Kevin Maguire's art in that this is based off of the Justice League International time, because that was always very expressive as well. But this is that was going for more of a comedy angle.
Yeah.
Here it's going for all of the stuff that you were just talking about telling the story through the looks of an eye and the way that the body language is.
Yeah,
here.
I mean, the story of the issue is that, they go together to Cord Industries to ask Ted about, basically, did you try to assassinate Lex Luthor? And the joke of the issue is that Ted gets asked one question and then never shuts up trying to answer it the rest of the issue. Basically saying, well, here's all the reasons why you probably wouldn't believe me if I just said no, because I have all these reasons to kill him, but I don't kill him because I don't kill people. And he kind of keeps talking. But this all happens and plays out as he's getting different calls to go be Blue Beetle in different places. So him and Ice team up for these different things. There's a bank robbery here. There's another thing here. And basically throughout, it's Chance watching and analysing in his narration. But the stuff that really made this thing was all the little moments of the romance, of the attraction. It's, when they're going to the Beetle ship, like there's a little moment where she's like, "Hey, I can feel you looking at me," and he's like, "Oh, so I was just wondering where you keep your costume." So it starts off pretty flirty, as Ted's just rambling on, and then they're sitting together in this one like sort of little chair at the back of the ship, and she's like, "It's cozy." But every time we come back to this, before I move on, that full page spread of the ship leaving the building that's above the clouds, beautiful, perfect. But yeah, so she's kind of like snuggles in close and like puts her head on his shoulder this first time, but then you get to the second time and it like turns into like, oh, now it's like the hands over the shoulder and she's like holding it with her hand, so it's getting more intimate. And then the third time you see her hand like sort of like grab his leg and like the inside of his leg, and it's like, oh, this is getting closer and closer. And there's a line somewhere in the middle where sometimes I look at you so much I just I lose my breath. And then later on, like after when he comments on like what they were doing during a fight, she says, "Oh, you were watching and yet you're still breathing." Like this, like it builds this like tension and like attraction throughout the issue at a perfect pace. So at the end of the issue, when he goes up to his room and she's waiting for him and says what she says and bites her lip, it's like this is crescendoed beautifully throughout the entire issue, in a way that is very expertly done. And the entire time you've got also the running comedy of Ted getting drunk and like sort of spilling whatever he can about Booster, about whatever's going on. And Chance, instead of because he says that usually you make someone drink because they'll start talking, like here he's hoping he'll shut up because he'll eventually pass out.
Yeah, so because Cord's doing that, like I kind of read it in the Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man cadence, and that he's just talking to hear himself talk, and then he reveals through this with Booster is that Booster wanted him to help him with the bagels.
Yeah, Booster's
But he's like,
Bagels.
oh,
Yep.
yeah, Booster. But he's like, Booster needs to stand on his own sometimes. You know, so you told him no. He goes, you're a decent person, Ted. And then he did get the money. He says he got the Martian to do it for him. And so there's the breadcrumb that now we have Jean getting brought up. And he goes, he somehow got Booster, or somehow Booster got his money. And then he passes out. So, yeah, Ted Quarter's kind of endearing in this, is that he has a motor mouth, right? And that, and it's almost, there's also an underhanded quality to him because, you know, they started off on the West Coast, and then each stop they got progressively to where they end up in Boston, almost as if, you know, Cord was almost trying to lead them away from where they were. But who knows? That could just be a red herring.
Yeah, I think obviously it's a reason. That's why they're in a hotel at the end of the issue as well, because they're the other side of the country.
Right.
But like, and yeah, there's a lot of like all these issues I've had. There's a lot of Chance reflecting on himself and like, oh, I should be spending my last week with family, with loved ones, because I don't have loved ones. So here I am. And you know, at one point, you know, Ace is like, you know, you could have helped with that, you know, fight against these bad guys. He's like, I'm not a superhero, and she's like, well, what are you then? And you know, it's almost this idea that maybe, assuming that she is genuine and this is like a romance that's flourishing and she's not like the femme fatale that is dangerous, which I'm not convinced she isn't still, even though
I don't trust her. I've seen enough movies.
That's the thing. It's not that I don't trust Ace as a character, it's that Ace in this, which to be honest, this is the best Ace story I've ever read at this point, because it's not like there's a lot of good Ace stories necessarily. I mean,
well, yeah, and it closes right. So when we got her origin, right, they talk about how she's a Nordic goddess, right? But then we find her actual thing that, no, she's just a meta who has ice powers. But here at the end, you know, he goes, truth is she's not a superhero, just like he's not. She's a god. And it's just like, oh, okay. So there's King subverting.
Well, not just that. So I mentioned the power. She bites her lip and says, "Oh, it'll get cold in here when I lose control." Right? Which is already like she's basically saying like, you're going to do well, right? You're going to please me. So that it's already kind of like an erotic thing to say. But then the kiss and his narration, his final narration as they go off panel is, she's a god. All I can think to do is get on my knees and pray. I mean, he's getting on his knees. There's a bit of a visual that it's like sort of implying there. Like in the idea that he's now worshipping her, which you could also interpret as her feminine wiles have completely worked and he is now treating her like a god.
Right.
And in the way that a man who becomes obsessed with a beautiful woman does, you know, like so like there's a lot at play here that is like, okay. But yeah, steamy last page, what can I say?
Yeah.
I was wiping my brow.
You know, I just, when I talked about stuff in Batman Catwoman being Tom Kingy, you know, with you know, the parallel stuff, here it worked out because the whole part of she's a god, after specifically earlier in the series telling us that she's not, you know, but here, just over this time he spent with her, now in his mind she is, and it's just, okay, see, King, this is where it works out better.
Yes.
But yeah.
Our art is like next level stuff, honestly.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, because there's like pages where he's like just watching them like deal with the bank robbery, and it's him just leaning against like the bottom of the ship, and later on he's leaning against a tree, and it's just like a sequence of 4 panels, and every one he's got a very different expression, and it's all just it goes with like this idea that he's thinking about stuff and he's reacting. One of the key points he brings up over the course of this, because it teases this throughout the issue, is that he says that there's something disingenuous about these like heroics. And it's at the end of the issue he reveals that Ace is holding back because she's letting Ted, like, because she could just deal with it herself very quickly, but she's letting Ted feel like a hero by like giving him a chance to like do some stuff and beat some bad guys up,
giving him something to do.
So it's like, well, if she's been disingenuous with that, then how disingenuous has she been with everything?
Right.
So yeah, it's very interesting. Super into it. Art is next level.
So good.
Yeah. Wonderful stuff. There's a skyrocketing to, you know, it's good because both Rorschach and Strange Adventures ended, so it's nice that this one's actually up at that tier of quality. Matt, what are you giving Human Target issue 4?
Do I do it? I'll just give it the 10.
I have to admit, I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I'm going 10. Like, I was just so like impressed as I was reading it. It was just doing wonderful things and telling a story.